people tell these stories all the time of, oh, turns out, I got fired from that job, or name disastrous thing. Turns out it was the best thing ever, and then they're like, blah, blah. And we tell those stories as if they are lore, as if they have this like magical quality that like this happened, but turns out like blah, blah, blah. When in fact, just life keeps unfolding. Like the movie keeps going on and new things come up, opportunities you didn't know were going to be there show up that you wouldn't have had on that timeline. And it's just the way the world works so I think that when we're in that snarl, I draw a lot when I'm talking to people, we imagine that there's this like one way out, and then I draw this circle around, and then the other 364 degrees of the way out are hot lava, that if you step in, everything burns and you're done. And in fact, there are some bad decisions there are some things that are just truly bad decisions. So a few of those degrees of that circle probably are lava. Most of them, it's just a difference of, well, it might be a little rockier if you go that way, or, you might have to climb down an embankment and back up the other side. It might not be the fastest, smoothest, easiest way there, but you'll still get there. Like you can still find your way. And so just taking some kind of step and noticing that it's not, that you have more choices is one way to get there. Putting yourself in situations where you're forced to figure out the next step. And this is the part that before we started recording, I mentioned that I have a lot of learning. Like I learn very differently and my brain works in weird ways sometimes. And there's things that I think in metaphor because I often cannot come up with the word that I need, the real word. And when I was being tested, I said something about a slice of paper, and she was like, see, like that makes sense, but it's like no one says slice of paper. It's just I can't find the word. So one of the glitches in my brain taught me this agency, and it from the outside, it might look like I'm super brave or fearless or something, and that is absolutely not the case. It's that I remember my first memory is the second grade. My teacher held up one of those purple, sometimes they used to be damp. I think it was the Ditto machine.
Oh yeah,
Was,
yeah. Oh
yeah. They had that like smell to them, whatever.
I'm
Totally
smelling it
aging
right
myself.
now. I'm right now.
She held it up and says, does anybody know how to use the Ditto machine? And I, for some unknown reason, didn't even put 2 seconds of thought into it, raised my hand and said, I do. I can't even tell you why. I don't know. Maybe I just wanted to go to the teacher's lounge. I have no memory. That part's always a blur. Always a blur. I can't tell you much about that part. What I can tell you about in that example and thousands since then of the moment where all of a sudden I'm like, I kind of wake up and I'm like, oh my God, I don't know how to do this thing. And so I'm standing in the teacher's lounge, and that was my kind of moment where I suddenly panicked because I don't even know which machine it is, not to mention how to use it, and frankly, I'm so short, like I need a chair. I can't even see up on the tables but here's the beauty of whatever that weird mechanism my head is that sort of shoves me into a situation. At that point, I was far more terrified or upset by the thought of going back into the room and saying, actually, I don't know how to do that thing, and looking like an idiot. So I figured it out. And in that case, I looked around. There happened to be one of those purple pages on one of the machines. I was like, oh, this must be it. And it's round. And I figured it out because there was something it's like walking up a high dive and then you want back down, but there's 12 other kids on the ladder and they won't let you down. You kind of have no choice but to jump. And so if you can put yourself in those situations, and what I recommend is don't pick the most life and death, career hinging moment to throw yourself into the snarl of figuring things out. Find small ways to not overthink a thing. Just move. Do any sort of like little action and really vet out how much am I overthinking. My sister gave me some of the best advice ever when I was trying to decide between these two things, and I was about ready to like make spreadsheets, and because, oh, by the way, I am super indecisive, which we have not mentioned yet.
I
am I can really slog into the quicksand of indecision. And she said to me one time, if it's that hard to decide between two things, there's probably not enough of a difference between the two that it really matters.
That's fair.
And it was like, oh my goodness, so just pick one and just move.
Yeah. So here, I wrote down a couple things that
Okay.
I think, I'm thinking about the listener right now, and I know she or he is got a decision that they need to make, because we all have decisions we need to make. We all have some that we're like holding on
Yep.
to that. Okay. And so as we're starting to kind of land our plane here, what are some like practical next steps? So one is, I think it's kind of, I love your idea of, while it's good to have some end in mind or some vision, really focus on the here and now. What's the decision you have to make right now? So that you kind of set a new chessboard, get into a new landscape. And so I kind of wrote down, just say yes. Just say yes. Like,
Yeah.
say yes, take a risk, do it.
Just
And
pick a thing.
and I think something we haven't talked about, but is important, is that when you do that, your post self-talk is important. So don't sit there and be like, oh, I'm an idiot. Why did I do that? That was such a stupid thing to do. Because I know so many people that do that. No, sit back and go, okay, all right. I made a decision. I figured it out. Here we are. Like, and I can figure out even a better way next time. Like the positive self-talk, which it helps to grow that agency. I think that's a fertilizer for it versus
100%,
negative self-talk.
Especially if you find small ways to do it. So, I really want to reiterate that if you struggle, everybody struggles with giant life-changing decisions. I would not start this effort on, do I quit my job? Start small. It's a conscious effort to do exactly what you're talking about. Make some small, don't belabor over which cereal to buy. Just buy a cereal and then notice if it really mattered. Was it worth that extra time? To me, it feels very similar to, I think, anybody who writes or whatever. There's a certain amount of going back over a thing you wrote that has value. And then there comes that point where it tips over into, I am soft filing off tiny edges that no one else is ever going to even pay attention to. And it's just because, to me, it all comes back to energy management. Like, you have a finite amount of time and energy and focus, and where you're investing it. I hate wasted time. And if you're investing all this time and energy into not deciding, which is a one point I really want to make, because it's part of the practical thing that I have people do. We have a pretty serious glitch in the human operating system of, and I'm sure there's some evolutionary reason for it. We are fantastic at predicting the pros and cons of making change. Like, oh, if I do that, this will happen, this will happen, this will happen, this will happen. We are flawed at, and so you have to do it consciously, at doing that same thing for staying right here in this moment and doing nothing. And, so people will say, like, doing nothing is still a decision. Yeah, but for some reason that doesn't perk people open. And I was working with a client who, for a variety of reasons, we were just exploring the option, whether or not it ended up being possible, of like putting her business on hold for 6 months. That's what she felt like she needed. She was just exhausted. And she listed out all these fears, like, well, I wouldn't necessarily I can't ask my employees to just be on pause. These are all legitimate things. Like, I'd either have to let them go and then I'd have to find new people. What if I lost my current clients? What about income? All things that you hear that part of the story, you're like, yeah, you can't possibly put your thing on business. You will think I'm making this story up. I wish I could like show somebody the notes of it, but it's too specific. So I said, okay, let's come back to, if you can't make that choice, if you stay right where you are, what are the downsides? And Brandon, I say this with so much love, like it was everything I could do not to giggle with like the depth of empathy that I had for her, because she could not hear that she was doing this until we laid it out and she could actually see it. She then listed the opposite of every single one of those things. So first of all, she was like, oh, so if I keep it the way it is, I have to deal with these people that she didn't like, the people that were working for her. They were driving her crazy. She didn't feel like they were the best people. And yet that was one of the things she was afraid of losing if she did this thing. Same with her clients. She was like, a couple of my clients are just driving me crazy and I don't know how to get rid of them because blah, 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 blah. She, what was the other one? There was another one, it doesn't matter, but she just went through and listed basically none of those things that she was afraid of happening were that problematic, because she actually had the opposite problem in the current thing.
Yeah.
And so once she could see it, then she was actually able to do what she wanted and needed, and it all worked out really beautifully. But I don't think she ever could have found her way there had we not backed up and purposefully, consciously listed out what are the risks and problems of staying right here in this
I think
place.
that's a really good point too, is evaluating the decision to not act right now or to,
Yeah.
yeah.